I will never compromise on the security of Israel and its citizens and on the vital interests that protect our future. I think you know, John, more than most, how important it is to ensure the security of Israel. And I hope that despite the shifting sands in the Middle East, together we can build a rock-solid foundation for security and for a secure peace. That's the job we're going to do in the coming days and weeks. Welcome.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Bibi. Thank you. Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Prime Minister, my friend Bibi. And let me begin by saying to all the people of Israel that our thoughts, my thoughts, are with the Sharon family as they sit in vigil with the former Prime Minister of Israel, Arik Sharon. We remember his contributions, sacrifices he made to ensure the survival and the well-being of Israel. And I have many personal thoughts about my meetings with him on many different occasions, always robust and strong and clear about his positions. And so we all join, all Americans are thinking of Israel and their leader, former leader, and of the vigil that is taking place now, a very personal level with his family.
We had an update from the hospital this morning here in Israel. We're not expecting, I think, to hear more unless there is a real change in the condition of Ariel Sharon. Clearly that condition remains very serious. He's been in a coma for almost exactly 8 years to the day. We understand that in recent days his condition within that coma has been deteriorating. Family are gathered at the bedside. We understand there have been discussions about what kind of medical intervention may or may not be possible. We've been told by a very senior doctor from the hospital where he's being treated that his life is in danger, but when he was asked about speculation in the Israeli media that perhaps that life expectancy could now be measured in days or even hours, the doctor said, look, I'm not a prophet. No one can count his days. So really we can't be any more specific than that. We know that Ariel Sharon, within that state of coma, is very seriously ill. His body is deteriorating. But what the next few hours and days will hold for him, we really can't say.
So Kevin, everyone watching very closely, obviously, can you remind us how he is viewed in Israel now?
Well, Ariel Sharon's a figure of enormous significance in Israeli society and Israeli history. His career dates back right to the foundation of the state in 1948. He fought in the Israeli War of Independence. He was a soldier for many years. He fought in all of Israel's crucial wars of what Israelis regard as national survival in 1967 and 1973. He was a very senior and significant commander in those wars, a national hero, if you like, and he took that authority from that military career into politics. He was always a controversial figure here. Not all Israelis supported his political positions, of course they didn't, and he was able to use his authority that he'd built up in a life of soldiering to push through some pretty difficult decisions in Israel, like the withdrawal from Gaza in 2005. So he was never afraid to make difficult decisions. I think it's fair to say, although sometimes a rather awkward thing to say at moments like this, that Ariel Sharon was hated by Israel's Arab enemies throughout the course of much of his life and was seen as a very controversial figure throughout the Middle East. Those Israelis who loved Ariel Sharon, who still love him now, of course, he is still alive, they would argue that the extent to which he was hated in the Arab world is perhaps a measure of the contribution he made to Israel's security through its many crises over the last decades.
I think it's safe to say that we know what the issues are. We know the parameters and the possibilities of peace. And as I said not so many months ago at Ben Gurion Airport as I left, the time is soon arriving where leaders are going to have to make difficult decisions. We are close to that time, if not at it.
We are close to that time, if not at it.
And I think we understand the circumstances within which we are working. I know, I come here with no illusions. I know that there are many who are skeptical of whether or not the two parties can achieve peace. But I will tell you that I have personally learned something about the power of reconciliation.
State John Kerry in Israel for a new round of peace talks. He's asking both Israeli and Palestinian leaders to make some tough political decisions now, but he says an agreement is not mission impossible. Connor Powell live in Jerusalem with more. Connor?
Well, Greg, Secretary Kerry has been in this region nearly a dozen times in the last year, and now he's facing the monumental task of trying to hash out a framework for a more comprehensive peace deal. Today, he met with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Tomorrow, he'll meet with Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas. Kerry said a peace deal is not mission impossible, but significant challenges remain. Truthfully, neither side really sees the other as a true partner in peace, and there are also major issues holding back the deal. One is the future of Israeli settlements in the current Palestinian territories. Right now, there are more than 300,000 Israelis living in the West Bank. Where they end up is a major sticking point, but perhaps the stickiest issue of them all is security. Israelis are demanding a continued military presence in a future Palestinian state as a way to prevent attacks on Israel, while Palestinians want Israeli troops out of any future Palestinian state. Kerry may say this is not a mission impossible, Greg, but it is certainly a very difficult one, and given all the history here, it certainly seems impossible.
Yeah, it sure does. Boy. Connor Powell, thanks very much in Jerusalem. So is Secretary Kerry on the verge of a breakthrough? Let's bring in Aaron David Miller, a former advisor to 6 secretaries of state and vice president of the Woodrow Wilson Center. Happy New Year. Thanks for being with us. You know, in your latest op-ed, excellent as always, you open by reminding the reader that nobody's ever lost money betting against an Israeli-Palestinian peace accord. So how do you handicap Kerry's optimism of a breakthrough?
I think the reality is, Greg, that sometime in the next 6 weeks, I don't like making predictions. I really don't. But the guy's relentless. He's the Energizer Bunny of American foreign policy. Neither Abbas nor Netanyahu want to be blamed. Jim Baker had a great expression. Neither side wants the dead cat at their doorstep. And both fear the alternative of no process. So out of all of these factors, I suspect Kerry will end up, if I'm right, with a piece of paper, a framework agreement.
If I'm right, with a piece of paper, a framework agreement.
The problem, of course, is if that piece of paper just covers up and masks fundamental differences, then the negotiations are really headed for a train wreck. And I think that's the real problem here. You got 5, 6 core issues. On some of them,
right.
Territory perhaps, maybe security, you can bridge the gaps. Jerusalem and refugees, much tougher.
Yeah, intractable problems on those last 2, it seems. Look, in your column also, you point out that Netanyahu sort of feels like he can prevail on security issues, refugees, recognition of Israel as a Jewish state. How exactly do you think those could be resolved?
Well, I'm not sure. When I say prevail, what I mean is that he has positions on those 3 issues that the Obama administration essentially supports. So he can basically, I think, hold out for getting his needs and requirements met. He wants the Palestinians to recognize Israel as the nation state of the Jewish people. Check that box. The Obama administration agrees. He won't accept a right of return to Palestinians in Israel. Check that box. The Obama administration agrees. And Kerry has offered him very generous terms in terms of maintaining an Israeli presence in the Jordan Valley. So on those 3, I think he's covered. And if, in fact, the Palestinians don't agree on those 3, then I think he's probably still in pretty good position. The other 2, Jerusalem and borders, Obama's probably closer to the Palestinians on those 2.
Yeah. Well, what about end of conflict and claims?
Well, here again, I think that's what the Israelis have always wanted. The downside for them is that it obligates the prime minister to basically resolve all the issues. If he wants an end to conflict, then all claims have to be adjudicated. So again, a piece of paper maybe, which would constitute something, but implementing it, that's another story.
What about all the Jewish settlements, Aaron? I mean, would tens of thousands of Israeli settlers have to vacate the West Bank? I mean, I've been to several of them. I recall going to Efrat, just south of Jerusalem, about 10,000 people live there, very Orthodox. I am telling you that they will not leave. I mean, you can bring bulldozers to their doorstep and they won't go.
Well, you know, the vast majority may well agree to be, at least in the blocs, may agree to be incorporated into the state of Israel, but you're still left with tens of thousands who are ideological, who've been living there for a long time, who consider this either nationally or biblically land that belongs to them. And you're right, they won't. And you know, as Prime Minister Sharon's health takes a turn for the worse, it is instructive to point out that only Sharon, the bulldozer, a.k.a. Ariel Sharon, the bulldozer, could have gotten away with disengaging from Gaza and dismantling 8,000 Israeli settlements. You don't have a leader like that in Israel today that has the street cred, the authority, the legitimacy, the authenticity to bring the public to that position. That's the real problem in the end. Do you have a leader who has the clout to make those decisions, frankly, in this case, on either side?
All right. Aaron David Miller, always fascinating to talk to you. Thanks so much for being with us. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Greg.
All right.
The time is soon arriving where leaders are going to have to make difficult decisions. We are close to that time, if not at it. And I think we understand the circumstances within which we are working.
There's growing doubt in Israel that the Palestinians are committed to peace. A few days ago in Ramallah, President Abbas embraced terrorists as heroes. To glorify the murderers of innocent women and men as heroes is an outrage. How can President Abbas say that he stands against terrorism when he embraces the perpetrators of terrorism and glorifies them as heroes?